unless you are here. I'm DOSMAN. This is Dave.
What's up, guys?
I'm with the Fraternal Order of Locksport.
I'm with the Tool, Open Organization of Lockpickers.
So we all like to have some fun picking locks and stuff, except in Tennessee.
No.
So first order of business, drinking game. So every time you see a lock, a video, or Dr. Tran, drink! Additionally, every time one of us dumbasses says, that's the advanced course. And there will be prizes. We have prizes at the end. So I need the most important thing for my presentation skills. And that's Dr. Tran, in case you didn't know. All right. So obviously committing crime is against the law. Don't do that. Picking your own locks is legal in most places. There's a few handful of states. Tennessee is one of those where possessing lock picks, if you're not licensed through the state, where that's a felony. There's a couple loopholes as far as here in this state that if you're a property owner, it's probably okay for you to have lock picks if you like recombinate the locks in your equipment on your properties. Also, if you have a key machine, you're allowed to do that for your business or whatnot. Possibly that may allow you to have lock picks as well here. But for the majority of people, if you came from out of state, we're not lawyers, we're not giving legal advice. But for the most part, it's fine for you to have lock picks and pick your own locks in the comfort and safety of your own home. And obviously, owning a set of lock picks does not transform you into a criminal. There's also additionally, while we're talking about Tennessee, there's a section that specifically states it's against the code of conduct, it's against the law to lockpick while intoxicated or while you're under the influence of illegal drugs. It's a good thing we're not locksmiths. All right. So what does TSA think if you want to travel and fly with them?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Can you guys hear me all right out there? Cool. You can take a lot of different things on a plane that you wouldn't normally expect to be able to, and lockpicks is one of them. There's some really high security lockpicks. I had a friend of mine that was able to take on, and they're only available for use with the government. And somehow, don't ask how he was able to get hold of them, but so you can take them on the plane, which is kind of ironic now that they have the locked cockpits, and that's supposed to be protecting you, but someone could go up and pick that lock, especially because they're Medico. We'll get into that later, and it's touched on a little bit in the presentation before. But DOSMAN here has an interesting story about that.
So my friend Shane, we were coming back from DEF CON, and I managed to scoot through security really quickly. And I was watching them go through his bag. He got the special white glove inspection. And they pull out a DEF CON badge, a bag of electronics, lock picks, and then they reach out and they pull out a container of hair gel. It's like, I'm sorry, sir, this is more than 3 ounces. We have to confiscate this. So, as long as your tools are less than 7 inches, you should be allowed to take them on the plane. So, anyway, Ulysses, they gave the previous presentation, did a really good job, and had a good breakdown of a lot of these different types of locks. We won't go into too much detail, I guess, on that, but we can talk about a lot of other cool stuff. So he had some real good photos of warded locks and stuff. Pin tumbler locks are where we're going to talk about picking them, and we're going to do that without breaking Tennessee law here. There's tubular pin tumblers with. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about lever locks just a little bit, and some electronic locks and stuff.
Okay. Basic entry to intro into pin tumblers, which was touched on by Ulysses. He did a great job with that. But just shows that each of these here have to line up. Each pins have to line up so the separations in the pins will meet at what's called the shear line, and that's right there. So basically, if you try to turn it, you've got the top pins or the bottom pins that are blocking for the plug from rotating. So it's basically just like a combination. When the various cuts in the key itself are going to correspond to different numbers that a locksmith then would use to cut those keys. And so it's each key essentially has its own combination. When you're able to line up all those properly, it'll turn successfully, as you can see in the bottom picture down there.
And the plug turns, and you can see that the pins are at the shear line, and it's all good. Drink! So there's a lot of ways to open a lock. If you wanna.
Yeah, sure. A couple different things. Using the key, obviously. I don't know if any of you guys have thought of that one. We don't try to use that one too often with our hobby. But brute force, which would include anything that's physical damage, not intended, generally would leave destructive marks. Manipulation, which is picking, bumping, impressioning, various techniques that we'll talk about as the presentation continues. Bypass. What bypass is if you're going to not without picking the lock, but avoid everything altogether and go right for the latching mechanism or actuation, whatever is actually physically holding your door together or keeping you from moving and opening whatever you're trying to get into. And then decoding. And decoding is a process of calculating the combination, essentially, of your pins or your key in your depths, and using that then to open the lock or to make a key. There you go.
Yes.
Compix is an example of that, of bypass, actually.
So here's the tools of the trade. You've got your tensioner. That's what you insert into the plug, and that's what puts your torsional force and allows you to rotate it, like the key rotates the plug. And you've got your hooks, your picks that either rake or manipulate the pins individually, and we'll show that here in just a moment. Now I'll go ahead and since a lot of people like to ask what are these for, like this, we'll demonstrate single pin picking. You'll use a hook for that. The half diamond and snake are good for raking, which is just sort of like a hammer away at it and see if it gets open by chance. The ball pick is good for if you have a lock that has pins on both sides of the keyway. I don't have a real good example of that in the slideshow, but if like a lot of auto locks will have pins on both sides and stuff. So that's for. And so yeah, so easy a Panda can do it.
Yeah. And one other note on different pick designs, you'll go online and you'll see these deluxe, super locksmith professional set, and they'll have 300 picks. A lot of that's superfluous. What you saw on the last slide there is what most people end up using. A lot of locksmiths will even use 2 of those picks most of the time. So you don't need too much to start out if you're getting started. You don't have to worry about investing in the biggest set. Just get anything, and you can get moving with that.
A basic 5-piece set, that's 90% of what you'll be doing when you start out. So like we mentioned, there's raking, which is just like tearing away at the lock. Pin by pin, which is it takes a bit more, well, for some people it takes a bit more practice. It takes a bit more skill to get the hang of it. We'll demonstrate these here in a moment. Actually, we'll demonstrate it now. So you can see that putting the tensioner in the top of the keyway, and what I refer to as the top is just the opposite side that the pins are on. In America, we have our pins located in the top of the keyway. In Europe and other places, the pins are in the bottom, are installed in the way like in a door lock. So the pins are in the bottom of the keyway. I'm going to insert my rig, and you see I'm pointing to the half diamond. And you'll notice the amount of pressure you're putting on the tension wrench can be gauged by how wide your thumb is turning and how deeply it's being pressed into your thumb. And that's a real good way to, that's the hardest thing for beginners to get past, is not putting too much tension on the tension wrench. All you have to do is like make contact, and that's all you need to start with. As you're picking, as each pin sets, the tensioner will move a little bit, as I'm demonstrating here. And when it picks, it's not just going to snap open. You'll feel the tensioner get spongy. It'll just kind of like give. And at that point, you can take your hand and just move the tensioner all the way around. Like, I think I just picked it there, yeah. And so I'll take it all the way around, and it's open. Woo! And that's just a close-up of the same thing. So, I mean, you basically, this lock has 4 pins. It's just a regular master number 3, which is a good one to start with.
Once you pop that cylinder, it's a great feeling. It just gives way, and you made it through.
So,
Dr. Trap.
All right, let's try that again.
Oh shit, it's Dr. Trap.
Drink.
Drink.
Oh shit, it's Dr.
Drink
Trap.
again.
And Ulysses, again, had a real good demonstration of security pins. If you saw his talk, basically it's, I like to say if it's nice, pick it twice. So with a security pin, you'll set it once, you'll feel a set, you'll feel your tension wrench move, but the pin will be set too high. And you can, and once you've picked a few locks, you'll notice that one just feels like it's in my way, it's just set too high. So set it a second time, and you'll move, you push the head back up in there, and we'll give a demonstration of what I'm talking about here, because you're going to have to back off with your tension wrench, and there's as much, if not more, technique in the tension wrench as there is in the pig. I'm using a hook since I'm going to be manipulating the pins one at a time, not just stabbing at it and going nuts. I'm going to go ahead and set a couple of the pins in there, and my thumb just moved. All right, so that was a set. The tensioner just moved. Now, watch my thumb. It's going to back off as I'm setting the pin, and then it goes forwards and breaks free, and the lock is open. And what you're pushing the head of the spool pin up in there. And once you can get basic raking down, you go to picking the pin by pin, and at that point that's pretty much most of what you're going to encounter in the U.S. As far as basic locks that you're going to find at the hardware store or something.
Now, starting out, it'll be tempting to try and rake as much as you can, because that'll give you a lot of success at first, and it feels really good just to get those locks open. But if you can really master single pin picking, that'll come into play when you're doing the security pins. You can't rake a lot of them, so it'll feel easy now, but try and discipline yourselves if you're trying to learn this one pin at a time, learn to feel and lift each individual pin, because it'll benefit in the future if you want to move on with the hobby.
Sorry, I don't have power here. I think I'll be able to make it to the end. All right. Thank you very much.
Rock on, thank you.
So, all right, I'll stop here and ask, are there any questions so far about picking basic pin tumbler locks?
And feel free to interrupt us at any point, too, if you guys want to chime in.
I would say the good one to start single pin picking is just a good one to start picking in general is like a master number 3, because it's going to give a big kerchunk. You can hear it when it sets as well as feel it. And I'll also throw out a bit of a prop to master lock, only because their locks really are quality. They just don't have any additional security features in the basic line of their locks. You can find a lot of really cheap Chinese locks that have a lot of garbage in them. You feel all kinds of things. You can't tell what you're feeling in there. And Master Lock is a nice, clean, well-made lock. It's just, it happens to be very easy to pick because it's very smooth action. You can feel what's going on. And their contractor-grade locks have some security features. So anything that's like a yellow, that has like yellow packaging or a yellow band on it, it's a Master Lock. That'll have some security pins, and that's a good security pin lock to start on.
Yeah. Also, if you wanted to pick up like a quick set or a Defiant brand, which is Home Depot's house brand, Walmart will have a lot of stuff like that. Pick up just a regular deadbolt or a house lock. Those are good too.
Excuse me, who the heck is this?
I've got balls of steel.
Ball.
Oh, what the hell?
Excuse me, who the heck is this?
I've got balls of
Hey.
steel.
Balls of steel. What is that?
All right. So, like we talked about bypass attacks, Ulysses talked about bypass attacks, and he was talking about shimming, shoving a piece of metal down in the lock. So these things, you can get these, you can make these out of pop cans, out of aluminum cans, and the most traditional things to start with a master combo lock, because you only have to use one shim. But you can shim regular locks as well. padlock. So the balls of steel, you want to look, actually,
Yeah, we've got, I'll pass these around. These are both ball bearing locks.
and the reason the ball bearing is important,
Feel free to play.
you want balls of steel because the mechanism turns and physically blocks the shackle in place. There's not a spring-loaded shackle in there, so you can't just push the retention mechanism out of the way and just open the lock. So if you look down in your lock with you've got it open, the ones that are being passed around, if you go ahead and open it up and pull the shackle out, you'll see a ball bearing down in there. And I mean, again, that's important because it's physically resistant, mechanically impervious to shimming, that mechanism.
And well, the way I always like to explain it too, when you have a ball bearing inside a lock and the shackle is down in there, there's just no space for the ball bearing to retract to when it's closed, and then you'll see the grooves cut in the top of the shackle. So you can push as hard as you want, but it just can't physically move anywhere.
So I'm going to move on to impressioning. It's something that I've kind of picked up this summer, and I'm still very much a beginner at, but it's a lot of fun. It gives me the same thrill of picking a lock open again for the first time. Impressioning is basically where, in a sense, it's sort of like decoding, but basically, well, forget about all the text on there.
This presentation will be available on Nathan's website.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to take a look at this if we
I'll
move a
have
little
the
quickly.
URL at the end. So this is my little rig here, and I'm an apartment dweller, so I've got this little rig I can take out on the sidewalk. Got my vise, got my lock set up, and I've got a file. The file is important. Just a run-of-the-mill file isn't going to really work too well. You need specifically a locksmith's Pippin file, and they run 50 or 60 bucks. And if you look straight into the file, it's teardrop shaped. It's round on one side, and it's got on one side, and it's got a thin edge along the opposite edge. And you want to file with the rounded edge on this. So you start by taking a blank. I bought like a gross of 50 master M1 blanks, and started with impressioning a master number 3 lock again. I prepared it by just shaving the top of the key off, or the part that contacts the pins. And again, using brass keys is really good. You can get aluminum keys, but they're too weak, as in the blade will shear off from the bow, the head of the key. So you put the key in, you've got your vice grips, and you want to hold it right up by the key head. No matter how hard you clamp your vice grips onto the key, it's not going to be hard enough. And you want to twist it so the plug binds, wiggle it up and down, twist it the opposite side, the opposite direction, wiggle it up and down, and then you pull it out. And it's kind of tough to see, but it takes some practice of honing your eyesight and having the right kind of light. You've got these 2 little marks there that you can see. There's actually 4 marks there, but those are the only 2 you can see from my photo. You're not looking for like anything across the surface. Just it makes it very slightly dull. It makes it kind of dark where the pins bind. And what you do, you file where you see the marks on the key blade, where the pins are binding. And I'll say the lighting condition for me was very important. I have a very hard time doing it in artificial lighting. Outside in the evening is the perfect time for me to get the right kind of light to see the marks. As well, when you insert the key into the lock, you're going to have a lot of marks because all the pins are going to ride along all the way in there. So you're going to see like a line down the middle of the key blade. So it's important to, you have to differentiate different types of marks that the lock is leaving on the key. What I've got here, this is the only difference in these 2 photos is the angle that I'm holding it in the light. These 2, you can sort of see something maybe, and with the angle turned, you can see some dark spots in the middle. And that's, you know, you just turn it in the light and look for the dark spots on the key. What's that? I can't.
The wonders of PowerPoint.
But I have this lock and this key with me, and I can show you the key. Again, even if I could zoom, the hard thing is the lighting really matters a lot, and there's not a whole lot to see, unfortunately. But there's just a tiny bit, and it's just honing your eyesight and figuring out the right kind of light to use. So the other thing is you're filing where the marks are. Well, I'm a noob, and I guess I'm not that good with filing because I got these two really close together. They're not really filed on the mark. And you can correct that. So you just kind of turn your file a little bit and push in the direction you want the cut to move eventually. But you also have to remember that while you're impressioning, each time you put it in the lock and you twist and you pull it back out, you're going to see wear marks on the outside edge of where your file is. So like right there is where you'll see it on that position. But you can correct that over time as you're going down and doing this. So in this one, there's 3 positions. You can sort of see something there. You can sort of see something there. And it's not very good, but in the lighting that I had, there's a mark right there. And I know it looks like crap. It doesn't look like much to go on. And it's just a matter of practicing and honing your eyesight to see what the marks are that you're trying to look for. Got a question? Yes, every single time. And again, an important part of this is you don't want to file too much because you can go past the point where you needed to stop. And you stop filing in a position when you stop seeing marks in that position. And you know, as you're going, you'll see some go down, some stop leaving marks, then some will start leaving marks, and you'll start taking those down. And you know, as you go, eventually you'll stop seeing marks, period, and you just stop filing on that position. This particular lock, it also helps to know how many pins are in the lock. You can take your hook or something, put it in the lock, push all the pins all the way down, drag it out slowly, and listen and feel. It's like pop, 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 pop. And as the pins spring back up, and you can tell how many pins there are. If it's a more difficult lock or something, or for a beginner like myself, you can also, verify how many pins are in the lock, also verify the spacing. And so that can kind of help you see, okay, this mark is what I'm looking for. This mark in between these 2 pin positions, I can ignore that, and I know visually to ignore that type of mark.
Now, one other note, too. There are a bunch of different techniques some other people are fans of. Some people will sharpen the tip of the key, so it comes almost to like a knife-like edge to better figure out the marks. People will take a lighter over the key to get some carbon on there, and then you'll be able to see the marks. Some people also use Sharpies, UV lights with special markers. There's a bunch of different stuff. But I had the honor of being able to attend Hacking at Random, where they had LockCon #2, which is the big conference over in the Netherlands. And the professionals there, they generally just use straight up techniques the hardcore people do that way. So a lot of that stuff, if you're looking into that, a lot of it's just a market. Someone's trying to sell you something you might not necessarily need. I believe the fastest time for a really high security lock that they used was a minute and 37 seconds, something like that. It was a world record. And that was a fellow Tool member over there in the Netherlands, represent.
Also add, the German club, SSDev, those guys are fucking serious when it comes to. So, you're talking about a real sporting competition with an impressioning competition. So these guys have not 1 vice, but 2 vices, because your vice might break in the middle of the competition. And this did happen. I went last year, and, vice broke. Hey, put it back in. Multiple files, multiple magnifying glasses, multiple lamps and stuff in case any part component in your arsenal fails. So the question is, how many keys, how long will your file last while you're, for how many keys your file can file through? How many licks to the center of the Tootsie Pop? I don't have that answer. Mine, I've burned through probably 50 or 60 blanks so far, and mine's still working like a champ. Like anything basic file maintenance, get a file card and keep it clean, keep the shavings out of the file teeth and stuff.
Drink.
My good friend Zach. All right, so you can see the progression. Starts here, goes down, and down, and then that's the final cut of the key, which is a very complicated cut. I probably took a photo about every other time, so about 12 to 14 times I put the key in, wiggled it, pulled it back out, and filed where I saw marks. And open. So the other thing is that when you finally do get it to open, it may actually only open one direction, where, like on a number 3, you can open the lock either direction with the key. Now, on this setup, impressioning is very specific in that, if you're cutting, like, the cuts at maybe not perfectly flat across, but maybe at an angle or something. So this one only turns one direction, and that's because the key is cut literally just specifically for the way that you've tried to turn it. The other thing is that once if you're a locksmith and you're impressioning a key for a lock, you don't want to stop when it finally opens, because what you'll see is the pins will make huge gouge marks when it finally opens. And you'll want to file and continue to take it down so that it opens smoothly without the vice grips on there. So the next thing is you will leave some wear marks. There's a guy named Datagram that's got a really good site on lockpicking forensics. And this is like the mark that I left while I was impressioning. I've also torn up some locks and torn up this little rim right here on the master number 3 while I was impressioning. So, a question? Absolutely. That's I'll touch on that briefly at the very end, but yeah, there was actually, I think Diebold had a case where they had the picture of the actual keys for some of their voting machines on their website that you could order if you're a state organization, and someone was able to cut a key from the photos that worked. That is a good question. I don't know. And the question is, can you use the numbers on the lock right here and cut a key based to code, basically? I don't honestly know what that code means. I assume it is the code for the key, but I don't know. If you have the code book, because honestly, a lot of times what lock manufacturers will do, they'll have conversions. So you put a number on the key, those numbers don't correspond to the depths. They have sort of like a code system, so that you have to have the book to look up what does that number actually translate to as far as the depths of the positions. Yes? Yes. So the question is, can you impression a Medico which has angular cuts? I don't know. I've never tried. I've not heard of anyone impressioning a Medico, but I don't know if anyone's tried that.
Yeah, I don't know much info on that. There are some really high-end, high-security locks that can be impressioned, and it's pretty scary, some stuff that you can do. It still just astounds me. I mean, I'm a big-time lock geek, but that you can walk up to a lock with no key and just a blank, and then walk away not only having opened the lock, but with a working key, so you can come back whenever you want.
I mean, that's an amazing skill to add to your lock-picking arsenal. Another question?
Well, but speaking of which, what you brought up, that's a very good point. There's actually an article recently on Hackaday. I don't know all the details, but somebody came up with a program where it could fit the photo and angle it as such so that it would fit the key. And they were able to snap shots with cell phones, and they were able to you could be walking along, someone could take a quick shot of your belt. People have telephoto lenses from maybe on top of a building, and you're across the way, and you could pick up. So there's some really scary stuff that's been proven pretty well. Sir? Okay.
The question is, and I'm just repeating for the audio, make sure everyone can hear. So the question is, how many key differs are there, and are there collisions occasionally between keys in a lock system? That's a very good question.
I was going to say, there's a standardization. As far as combinations go, you could probably figure that somewhat easily if you figure most simple ones, like for a brand like Kwikset, goes from 1 to 6 with the different pin depths, and they're going to actually be measured to thousandths of an inch. But then pin number 1 is 0.5 or whatever, and it goes up. Schlage, I believe, has 1 to 9, so there's a little bit more combination. So you could probably figure that out relatively easily.
I'll go ahead and add that. I know Matt Blaze has done some cryptanalysis of like key space and stuff with different mechanical locks. I don't have anything more to say about that other than the people have looked at it from a cryptanalysis standpoint. I don't really have any information on what that resulted in. And by the way, I'm meant to be giving out. I've got these key-shaped bottle openers. I affectionately refer to them as beer picks. And I'm trying to give them out to people that are asking questions. That was a really bad one.
If you could help him get to the.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm Ulysses there. Yeah. And I know someone else asked a question.
Yeah.
Hit me up all. You had a question?
Can you talk a little bit more about your technique for getting those pins to impress on the key point and how you first bind maybe and then move up and down? Can you expand on that?
So I'll just go back for a second to that again.
And this is getting tedious side. Drink.
So if you get it in, is it like the up, down, just to make sure that the pins hit it?
Yes.
Because they're going to hit it all going in anyway, so if you jiggle it up and down, they'll have a better chance of leaving a mark, right?
Yes, and what the important part is that you're twisting with your vice grips, or they actually have impressioning handles you can attach, but it's a fancy pair of vice grips. And you twist so the pins are all bound, and just sort of like lock picking, but you want them to bind really hard, so they're held in place. Like you want all the pins in lock to bind, or as many as possible, and then you take the thing and you wiggle it up and down, and then you twist it the other direction and bind, and hopefully that'll bind all the pins one way or the other, and they'll leave a mark. Now you're not always going to see a mark. Well, in the beginning, the hardest time to see marks on the key is the very first time. As far as the very first time you put the key in and bind, because it seems like there's just not a lot of material for the pins to bind up against inside the plug. Excuse me. So again, it can kind of help yourself if you have a set of depth keys, which is basically a bump key. For those that might know what a bump key is, that is actually a depth key. But you can clearly see each position where the pins are, and you could put that up next to your pin, your key, and see, is there a mark that appears here or here or here, right where you know where the pin should physically be located.
Would you mark it with a really thin Sharpie or something, and then
Some people do prefer that, and that might help you also for starting out.
that mark is gone, then
Exactly. Yeah, I've known people to use that one as well. Sir, you had a question in the back there? Okay. Do we have another hand over there? Okay, very cool.
Very good.
The comment was you take the number of pins and then put it to the depth of the pins and put it to the power of the number of the pins to figure out the maximum combinations. And then there's another system that locksmiths use called max, but that's a little more advanced and probably not as interesting. But basically, it's just if you have one pin that's really long and then you have a pin that's really short next to it, the key is not going to be able to fit in because of the way it has to ride over the bitting of the keyway. So there is some restrictiveness to how you can pin it. A lock is going to be a little bit tougher to pick. Let's say if you've got a pin in the front that goes way, way down and then one that's way up right behind it, you've got to hook your pick underneath, hit that up without bumping the one in front of it. But there is a limit to the difference in height that you can put in there and still be able to operate the key in and out smoothly.
Question? The question is, does this apply to keys that have side pins or pins at different angles in the lock? That's a very good question. I would think so. I've not personally gotten to that point where I'm impressioning like higher security locks, but do you?
Well, the lips do.
Well, yeah, we'll get to foil impressioning, which technically, yes.
We're close. Well, there are ways to do that. I've seen people do it with drills and even a drill press if you want to be really precise, but even just a hand drill, I've seen someone mess around with that. Or like dimpling tools, like a pin punch, so you could like hit it on the key and make it go in farther. So there are high security locks in that way that can be the impression.
I'm going to start moving on. It is, well, we'll get to that here in a moment.
Most any component that is actuated by a spring or has some kind of pressure on the key and binds when you turn it will leave a mark on the key. So one way or another, you're generally able to impression if it's binding when you're turning the key.
The next thing is you're going to break a lot of keys. The thing is to stop before well, the moment you start seeing a tear in your key, stop, take a new blank, file it down to where where you've gotten this one at, and continue with a fresh blank, because you don't want to snap off a key in there. It just sucks. And as well, you see how there's this sharp peak right there? If I had to go another cut, I was going to start filing these peaks off, because you can end up getting the key stuck in there, and if you do that and break it off in there, which I've had happen, that really sucks. So once you start getting deep valleys, you want to start filing down those peaks off. Just take another file, flat file, and just shave it off, and keep going. And this is foil impressioning a dimple lock. This is a Lips brand Octro.
That's a really high security lock.
14 pins in this particular lock that I've got. So it's got pins at 3 angles, both from both sides and along the edge. Otherwise, it works just like a normal lock as far as like pins. Now, this is a blank that I've dremeled down with the Dremel tool. I've drilled out just a blank. I get them off eBay. So I'm now going to cover this key blank that I've drilled down as deep as I could possibly get for every position. And I'm going to wrap this with ordinary household aluminum foil. And it's important, and this is not really sophisticated. Again, I'm just using my Dremel tool. I'm doing this in my kitchen. You want to tear your tin foil or aluminum foil so it fits, and you don't want to wrap it you don't want very much overlap, because you want the pins to just kind of fall down in there. You want to twist down the aluminum foil on the tip. You don't want it to catch when you insert it in the lock. And gently wiggle the key in there, wiggle it back and forth, and it's open. I never overlap more than, say, an 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch maybe at the most. The question is, do you ever have aluminum foil break off and get stuck in the lock? Actually, I forgot. This is actually the lock here. I've got another lock that's very similar, made by Sargent Queso. And this is the very first foil impressioning blank that I made. And you'll notice it's stuck. Now, the aluminum foil isn't what caused that. It's because I actually drilled holes all the way through the blank to ensure that it was deep enough. I got to 180 degrees, and the pins fell through and are stuck. So this is a write-off. You want to be careful. Now, I will also say the reason I got interested, well, let me rephrase that. I became aware of the Sargent Queso locks because it's what my banking institution uses on their front doors. I just thought it was interesting. I wanted to know more. I'm not sure how to approach them and try to tell them to change locks. I'm not sure I want to do that. But question? I believe the question was, is there have to be enough angle depth so the pins fall down into the holes correctly? Yes, I believe so, because I mean you want you're going to have it a little bit wider, the hole in the dimple key a little bit wider than the normal pin is, because the aluminum foil has to fit in there and allow the pin to fall in just like the normal key. So there has to be a little bit of tolerance there. I got a set of Dremel drill bits that I picked up at Hamvention, and they're real tiny, and some of them are wide, have a shallow point on them. I didn't do anything very scientific. We'll refer him to a locksmithing professional.
Did we get him with the
Yes.
beer key?
Key?
Beer key for you, sir?
Did I get one to the other gentleman over there? All right. Excellent. Because it's illegal to perform locksmithing services if you're not a licensed locksmith. in Tennessee.
Drink.
Drink. Yeah.
We're going to pass these around so you guys can see. You see the jammed up one here too, yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to lever locks. Actually, we need to start speeding up a little bit here. So like Ulysses in his talk, he did a good job of covering lever locks. They, not to be confused with warded locks, which are retardedly easy. While I was at the NSA Cryptologic Museum last spring before last, they had this little piece. It looks to be not a high security, but an ordinary lever lock that guarded their nuclear weapons bunker. This is PhreakNIC, so we'll discuss a payphone lock here.
Yeah.
Woo. So anyway, the basic design. You want to go into the?
No, you can go.
All right. Well, so you've got your key. You've got these little stair steps that's fitting, and this edge right here is located right there in that photo. And they raise these levers to different positions. And you've got this gate in there. And when all the gates are lined up to the same position, the bolt mechanism can retract into the gate. Or I'm sorry, that's the fence will retract into the gate, if I'm not screwing up my lever lock terminology. Right there is another little notch. That's a false gate. So that if you're lifting up each lever and you try to feel if the fence moves a different amount, it will feel sort of like a set, sort of like a security pin, so to speak. I'm not going to go into picking them because, well, I understand conceptually, but I've never done it. But there's an interesting bit of trivia here. So the original locks and keys were made by Western Electric, the phone company, basically. And they've been replaced by modern-day Medico locks. Now, the Medico key, I noticed, doesn't look like a normal Medico key. And Medicos normally have a very strong brass color. They have a square head or a round head. But this key, they used a 4-pin key. It's pretty much almost exactly the same length. These photos aren't to scale. But you've got this hole right here that is the exact same shape. The head is roughly the same shape, same length. And what I was just curious why they would go to that much trouble to make the keys look the same. And I had a chance to talk to Peter Fields last year, and he's an engineer for Medico. And he explained to me that apparently the system the phone company uses to organize their payphone change box keys is some sort of like pegboard system. The key physically has to fit correctly in there, and it's all part of their corporate organization as far as of how the keys are organized. So that was a bit of trivia that I never expected to be able to get an answer to this question that I had. But interesting. The do not duplicate stamp on keys, I've heard that that's sort of like a loose guideline that people are not like legally obligated to follow. But I imagine if they told you if they refuse to duplicate the key for you, obviously they're not going to do that. That's interesting.
Wow. Hypothetically speaking, of course, if someone were to say have a piece of tape over that do not duplicate markings, or maybe like a key head with a color on it, maybe the locksmith wouldn't see that and might copy the key. Drink! Yeah, oh, yeah, that would be an interesting component. Yeah, the question was why on a payphone key don't they have something that would maybe trap the key, if I'm understanding correctly, until the operator would maybe send a tone to the payphone to release the key itself. I think typically the user won't be using it. Maybe it would just be the service.
That is a very good question. We will talk about key trap systems momentarily.
Yep.
And that's an excellent
Pork
question.
chop sandwiches.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about this electronic key system that I'm fond of for a computer system called an AS400. And the story starts off with, I was employed by the manufacturer of the AS400, and I was a service technician, and I noticed these electronic key sticks, and I thought they were kind of interesting. Key for you. Yeah. And it's got this little, I don't know if you can see it too well, there's an 8-pin header. It's just a standard circuit board header that plugs into the control panel. This is one of the control panels I have in my possession. You open up the key, and that's all there is. But when I first asked, when I was a young boy learning the ways of the 400, one of the technicians I was working with I asked him, like, do you know anything about these? And he's like, oh, no, you're never going to break into that. That's, there's crypto and there's, it's electronic circuitry. It's not, you're not going to figure that out. So, yeah, so I cracked one open eventually, and really sophisticated looking. So you'll notice that this little black box here has a pin header that may or may not fit the connection on the front panel. There's some other things in here. That is a light sensor. That was a potentiometer to tune the sensitivity of the light sensor. And sadly, I wrote a whole paper on this. We'll get there. So when you insert the incorrect key stick into the control panel, it displays this error code, and the system attention LED is illuminated. This is basically the check engine light on your car. It could mean any of a million different things. And this is not logged by the OS. This all happens within the electronics of the control panel. The OS is not aware of what's going on here. What I just told you is documented publicly in documentation from the manufacturer down on this link. So I've not told you any proprietary information about the system. And the reason this is important because I was denied permission to publish my paper on this because I was employed again by the manufacturer of this system, and they considered it intellectual property. However, they no longer include key sticks on their modern versions of this system, this hardware. I'd like to think it had something to do with this research that I did for a little while, and this was a lot of fun. But it basically, of course, with the system attention LED lit, you know that you have an incorrect key. So when the light goes out, you know that the key is correct. So anyway, a smart person should definitely be able to figure that out. It's not too hard. Drink. All right. So relating to trap pins and stuff, trap keys. All right, where are we at? The EVA MCS. I really like this lock. A lot of people like this lock. It uses magnets. And let's see here. Other side. So I've got these keys here. This is the lock in the photo of the plug I've got removed. And so when you, when you insert the key, north is like, basically it could be one of like 8 positions all the way around. And both sides of the magnet can be different. It's an interesting custom process they have. And then it aligns these little discs up so this notch all points the same way. This shows the discs scrambled in any position. When you pull the key out, the magnet on the very front of the key scrambles the rest of the discs. And I'll demonstrate that here. All right. And you'll notice the discs spinning as the key is inserted. And so it's really neat. And so the reason the discs spin is so that a sidebar, and I'll have that in the next photo, it's got these little fingers that slide into the notches on the discs. And This is the inner sidebar. This is the top. This is the bottom. These are the fingers that slide into these little positions. If this physical thing slides